We feel that in video, as in other forms of communication, story is the most important element. If the basic story is strong and you tell it with care and conviction, you will be successful.
In this lesson, we'll go over the basic workflow we've developed for organizing your video footage, beginning to write your video script, and also the creation of your written case study. The process of organizing your footage begins as soon as you film your first day of production. You're going to want to look at your B-roll scenes and evaluate them, and you're also going to want to review and check your interviews. And as you do this, you're going to start to build your initial thoughts about your film. What are your strongest elements? What sort of narratives can you build? You'll also want to start right away the process of getting transcriptions. This is something that's a huge time saver, and nowadays there's some very inexpensive services out there. If at all possible, you can do this. We recommend it highly, and we include various links here on our course website for options for getting transcriptions done at a very, very low cost. And once you're done that, you're going to want to move on to evaluating your B-roll in more depth. This is where you really want to look through your scenes and think about what sort of coverage you have, what scenes would really anchor your film emotionally, and also how can you arrange them in an order that makes sense around the ideas and the other themes of your film. And you'll also want to start thinking about what sort of gaps do you have. If you have a couple strong scenes, you might be missing some very basic B-roll, images of the city, a sequence to introduce a character. So very often you film the big complex scenes first and then go back and film out of sequence other scenes to fill in the documentary and make a complete narrative that makes sense to the viewers. You'll also want to start doing initial scripting at this stage based on this initial review. You're going to want to think about what sort of potential narratives are emerging. Is there archive out there that you're going to want to get that's going to supplement and help tell your story? And are there other interviews? It might be that after filming a couple big B-roll scenes and doing a couple important interviews, you realize that you're really missing this other perspective or a different sort of person. Or there might even be other scenes, like I talked about before, B-roll of a city or showing a certain process that are really going to be helpful to your viewer understanding the story. And this is the time when you do that scripting and planning. Once you've done that, and once you have this basic outline and the narrative clear in your mind, you'd move on to a very detailed analysis of your interviews. And this is a very time-consuming process. If you have those transcriptions, it helps a great deal. You can look at them on the computer or on paper. And then you need to think about, watch your interview, not just read them, because it really depends on how people are on camera. How do they present themselves? It makes a big difference for the bites that you choose. And you'll also want to think about where that person will enter your story, because in most documentaries, if you think about it, people are going to enter organically where it makes sense for them to enter. If you have a scene about policing, it might be appropriate to have an interview with the chief of police. If you're talking about schools, it might be appropriate to hear from a professor or a student or a parent. And very often those people could often come back in the story later on because they might have fantastic opinions about things. There's also certain experts who are not connected to any specific part of the story, but are more general experts who you interview. So you're going to think about how all these people fit in, where they organically enter your story, and start to build this jigsaw puzzle around those interview bites. What parts of the story will they tell in the interviews? What will you say in narration? That's the art of doing the documentary edit.
Written cases do some things better, and video cases do other things better. Make sure that each approach takes full advantage of their strengths and reinforces the other approach. A written case can provide more detailed and nuanced information. A case of just 12 pages can provide whatever detail you need, whether you want to provide a complete sequence of events, or list people, places, and events, or provide charts and data. Whatever you need, you can pack it into that written case. The video case packs a different kind of punch. Videos create a sense of immediacy. A video case moves, so it's full of energy. It's visual. It taps into the visual centers of the brain, which is the main way we process the world. Because there's sound, we can also connect on that level. Video clips can give the ambiance of a scene, which makes it almost like being there.
When we start to write the written case, we need to take advantage of the pieces we've gathered for the video case. That includes video transcripts, videos from site visits, images gathered to make sense of the story, notes, memos, slides, all kinds of stuff. As we prepare to write the case, read these materials and ask, what can I do with a written case that I can't do with a video case? In fact, make a list. Think of the written case as the companion volume for the video, kind of like putting two pieces of a puzzle together. A student typically views the video first. Done well, the video will raise all kinds of issues. Students should be curious to dive into more depth on the case, to take their time and look closely at all of the documents, data, and other evidence. As soon as possible, get a sense of the way the video case frames the issue. How do they introduce a topic? What questions do they pose? Who offers inside information about the case? Who offers expert opinions? When you write, build on the major points from the video, but then take a step further. A video might be able to present only a few pieces of data, but you can go much further in a paper case. To go deep, consider a few simple questions. How can certain stories go further, but not for the sake of length, but to offer more fodder for discussion? How can ideas and definitions be expressed in more useful detail so that students can use them to solve real-world problems? Always, the paper case writer should strive to spark an exciting classroom discussion, not just academic discussions, but a discussion and a debate that gets at the heart of real-world challenges and dilemmas.
Keeping in mind some of the basic concepts about story that Charlie's been talking about the written case, let's come back now to the video case. Our next step here is creating what we call a radio cut. A radio cut is a very basic building block of any documentary, and it's essentially the documentary laid out with narration and bites, without B-roll, without other scenes, just the core story as if it were a radio show. And as you build this, you want to remember that the interview bites that you'll be choosing can appear either on camera, i.e. you see the person talking, or off camera, where you hear the person talking and you see other things, which gives you lots of flexibility for how you edit different bites together. And our suggestion is go for emotion and strong opinions in your interview bites. You can always use narration to get the basic facts across. If you spend too long in the interview bites having someone explain long and complex facts, it slows your film down a lot. I think you'll really want to focus on using narration to tell the basic facts and using your interview bites to go for strong opinions and emotion. And in terms of the narration, we have a few final suggestions. One is try to keep it short and sweet. Try to keep simple sentence structures and try to stay to the simple and basic facts. Try not to have any opinion enter into the narration. Try to not do anything that the viewer would feel that you're arguing for one side or the other. Unless, of course, you are doing a first-person narration, which is a very valid documentary technique where you yourself are an actor in the story and you are obviously expressing your opinion about the issues being discussed or shown. That's a different situation. But in general, a neutral narration that stays to the facts is a very useful device, and it lets your interviews and the things that you show in the film speak more loudly and for themselves. Well, we hope this basic introduction to thinking about video editing and story creation is useful. Now we're going to go into some very hands-on tutorials with our student editors, Sean and Elijah, about actually how to do your first video edit.